Welcome to a new episode of the Cartridge Club, where we discuss our game of the month with members of the Cartridge Club community. If you have played along, you can always share your own experiences in the forums at cartridgeclub.org, in our community's Discord, or across social media by using the hashtag PlayAlongWithPrime. My name is Ryan, aka It's Rocket Sauce, and because it's October, we are sticking with the tradition of playing a spooky-themed game. The game that we're playing is the NES fan favorite Castlevania III: Dracula's Curse. Joining me on the show, we have the community members Duke from Retro Nonsense, Chris BaseGuy654, and first-time guest Matt Bandy. So fill up a glass of holy water, grab your whip, and settle in as we take on Dracula once again. Now, generally, we normally just let the guest start right here. But since I have the most controversial opinion about this game, I think I'm just gonna start it off by saying, like, I want to say that this is the worst one on the NES in my opinion, and I know it's a fan favorite. I know it's a fan favorite. The fans really talk about it, which got me so excited for this game. That's one of the main reasons I chose it to be a game of the month. I am a huge fan of the first game. It's one of my favorite games of all time. It's easily in my top 10. And I've been playing every year now going forward because I could never beat these as a kid. And now with, I guess, the abilities to play, watch walkthroughs online, find out what I wasn't doing correctly as a kid, it's, kind of made me go back and actually start learning how to play these games.
Have you ever watched any of those world record runs on the Castlevania?
Oh, yeah.
Castlevania?
I get excited all the time on
watching. It's crazy.
Those Castlevania blocks on, like, the Games Done Quick. I get so excited for those,
Yeah, that's wild.
Mm-hmm. But, like, I've been trying to do at least one Castlevania game every October now. It's kind of been a little goal of mine. So I've done 1, 2, now 3, and 4. So I'll probably do, like, the Genesis one, next year, or Rondo, one of the two. But
I always forget about that Genesis one.
That's good.
I didn't know about
that game.
Bloodlines, yeah.
I didn't know about it until probably 7 years ago. If I would have known about it as a kid, I probably would have rented it.
Yeah, I never knew about that as a kid. I discovered that as an adult, and I played through it. It might have been last year or the year before for the first time, and I loved it. It wasn't as good as Castlevania IV, in my opinion, but great game.
Mm-hmm.
But I do find it curious that you like Castlevania 1 so much, and you don't like this one. I don't understand that.
It does a lot of, like, nice things where what you want from a sequel, right? Where it adds stuff to it, where it adds more characters, so you're not just doing whipping and, I guess, throwing your optional items. I like that effect a lot. There's things it does great here too with branching paths. It makes replayability. It has great replayability, but the thing what I would say that holds it back for me is this game's difficulty. It is brutal. This game's difficulty, and I played the easy path of doing this here. So
is that the only thing that, because the gameplay is exactly the same, like the way you move your characters and the jumping and all that's so closely related to the original game that
I would say they did add some different hazards that weren't in the first game, like the waterway and the stairs. Yeah. The stairs are blocks are usually much longer than you'd see in, like, the first one.
Yeah, I've died on the stairs a ton in this game. A ton. It seems like that was one of my biggest difficulties in this game, were the stairs. I've never had so much difficulty walking up and down the stairs. Even fighting Dracula, I think I've died at least 4 times trying to get on the correct step walking up the stairs, basically. And that just adds to the frustration.
Well, you died walking up to him?
Just trying to walk onto the stairs, or just go straight down.
Yeah, they certainly.
That's brutal.
I think speedrunners always joke. Speedrunners always joke about the stairs being an additional boss, because you're trying to, like, especially, like, I think it was on the last Block 9, like right before the last long set of stairs. There's a knight that's, like, throwing axes at you, and then you go up the stairs. You go to attack him or use a sub weapon. Then you end up hitting the stairs, and it screws you all up.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I know what you're saying. Yep.
So
That is one thing that drives me. And that's my biggest complaint about this game is being close to the stairs and trying to kneel to hit somebody and you go down. That fucking drives me bonkers.
I'll say that I personally think that the difficulty is perfect. Like it's challenging, but it's the kind of challenging that I really enjoy. Overcoming a game like this to me is the ultimate experience in playing the Nintendo Entertainment System. It's to me the perfect NES game. It's a masterpiece. It is challenging, but not. It wasn't like throw your controller challenging. At least not for me. I'm not trying to brag.
I want to say, granted, I have carpet. You have carpet, so I don't whip and throw controller, but I don't know if anyone has like their little slight frustrations, but I always just kind of just let it go from my hand and walk away, cussing an expletive here and there, basically, because man, this game really did that, and I'm sure we're gonna talk about my favorite level later on here, but
I don't know. I found the difficulty. I found it perfect because I like hard games. I like challenging games. And I don't like games that are unfair. And I never thought this was unfair. I thought it was challenging, and you had to learn the patterns. You had to learn the boss patterns. You had to, memorize certain areas. But I don't know. I mean, and again, I don't want you to take this as bragging, but I had very limited time to play this, and I beat it twice this month. So for me, that tells me that it was certainly something that was, and I got frustrated, and it was definitely hard, but not to the point where I thought it was not fun or unfair.
But I think with any Castlevania game, you kind of have to know. I think everybody here probably knew what they were kind of getting into. The Belmonts are all, I guess, these big burly, like superhuman vampire hunters. So I guess they move slow, they're stiff, and there's a rhythm to how you have to whip. So it just it always takes me whenever I switch over from something has really tight controls like a Ninja Gaiden 2 or something, and then I go to Castlevania, I have to readjust and then get used to how the game platforms and the whips and all the sub weapons work. So it's definitely an adjustment whenever I play a Castlevania game, because I don't play these very often.
No, I actually love the platforming in this game. Even though it's slow and stiff, I actually like that a lot about the game. What I feel as if it's cheap. I feel a few of the side enemies are cheap in this game. It mostly has to do with maybe with the level design, but it's just the crows and the crows and the flying gargoyles. I want to say they're an absolute nightmare for me.
Those were on the stair climbs, But yeah.
In
I
level
didn't have
9.
a problem with them. I did have a problem with the crows oftentimes, especially in that I think
the crows
have
they have different patterns too.
Yeah. They kind of jump all over the place, and that really tripped me up.
The Demon Knights kind of do that S, and then they do a wider S, and then yet another wide S. That sine wave, and they're kind of annoying. The only way I ever got past those is I'd just sort of stop and pray that they would be within the disc striking distance, like when I stopped on the stairs.
Yeah, a lot of times with those guys, I'll just don't even bother trying to whip them. I'll just either walk down the stairs or just let them avoid me completely. That was almost an easier strategy sometimes.
You're talking about the level where you're going up the stairs and there's the fireball shooting statues and then the gargoyles are flying. I found that pattern really quick, and once you get that pattern down, you can just zip right up there without even getting hit once. I didn't find that difficult. My hardest part was the water and the crows and the fishmen. I think that's level 9.
Yeah, that's I'm sure we'll talk about that. I know what you're talking about.
Because I think the very first waterway, which wasn't too bad, was block 7. I think that's when they started to introduce that waterway.
That was right before the two-headed dragon fight.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Ryan, did you find the levels more challenging or the bosses?
Levels.
What frustrated you more?
Easily the levels. Mostly it probably has to deal with doing the Sypha route, because I think Sypha's known as like the boss killer. She's known for absolutely like whomping them out with some of her abilities. Even though she's the I don't know if she's the stiffest, but she definitely doesn't have like the best jump of anything in the game. But I actually probably towards the end of the game was playing with her more than I was with Trevor on my run.
I'm not 100% sure, but I think her jump is exactly the same as Trevor's.
I,
I
w-
think
I
it's the
wouldn't I
same
wouldn't
exact
doubt it. Yeah.
trajectory.
Yeah,
I think.
it's not shorter. It's not bigger, but Grant's is definitely a lot.
Because
Yeah, his is different because you can move him in the air.
Yeah, you can move in the air.
Because I think one nice thing about Sypho I thought was the staff was you could act was a little. It was probably about maybe the second fastest weapon, like melee weapons.
And it's on a different plane too.
Yes,
you kind of up and down
above you as well.
Yeah.
Because I thought that they did have a good variety of like sub weapons and abilities like throughout the three spirits and Trevor. So I thought that was pretty good. Although I mean honestly I thought Alucard was probably my least favorite to use.
He was my first second character that I used, and I never played through this with Grant.
Where do you rank this, Stu? Because you like this a lot. Where do you rank this out of the Castlevania games you played? Where do you rank this?
Okay, well, let me start with a not funny story, but interestingly enough, this is the first time I've ever played this game, played through, which oddly enough, I didn't even really realize. I was an absolute Castlevania fanatic back in the day when I was a kid with 1 and 2. And I think what happened was I think that the Super Nintendo came out around the same time as this game, and I'd moved on to Castlevania 4 and somehow missed this. But I remember getting this when I was game hunting as an adult, and when I got it, I was like, oh yeah, I played that. It's Castlevania 3. I must have played it. And then when I played it for Kevin's Heart Foundation charity thing, the glitches in there, I was like, I never played this before. What's going on? I thought that I had played it. And so I was very, very excited to play this for the first time all the way through with you guys. And again, the gameplay is so much like the first one that I felt like I had played it and I felt very comfortable with it. But it blew me away. I think this game was fantastic. And now that I've played through it twice, it's definitely the best one on the NES, I think. And I have a lot of nostalgia for that first one. But I think it blows the first one out of the water just with the multiple paths, and it's just so tight. There's no flicker in it. It's such a polished game, and the music is just off the wall. So good. So I really have nothing bad to say about it. I thought, like I said before, that the challenge was well balanced. The graphics are great. The music is great. I love the genre. I love platforming. I really can't say anything bad about it. So it's very high on my list. Now, whether or not it can be Castlevania 4, I haven't really thought about too much yet. It's right there with it, though. Castlevania 4 is probably a little bit better, I think, just because it's Castlevania 4. It's so good. But this one is right there with it for me.
Have you played Symphony of the Night yet, by chance?
Oh, yes. Love it.
Is that the main reason why you went with Alucard on your first run?
No. I just kind of was. I didn't know how the paths, like where to go. I didn't look up anything online or how to do this. Or I just kind of happened to go a certain path, and then I found Alucard. So that's just happened to be the first person that I used. So no, that is not why. But I did play Symphony of the Night. Played through it a couple of years ago, and I absolutely love that game too.
Cool.
Yeah.
Well, I guess one more general Castlevania question for you, Duke, because you're a fan. Was 4 the first one you've beaten, or was that like the first one you really played in the series and then you went back? Or because I'm just asking generally.
Oh no, I played and beat 1 and 2 as a kid multiple times. I probably beat Castlevania 1 15 times. So I am a huge fan of that game, and I beat it multiple times as a kid and throughout my life, almost like an annual thing. And Castlevania 2, I've beaten that multiple times as well. And then Castlevania 4, I beat that back when I was a teenager, and multiple times since. So I've played them all and played through them all multiple times.
Chris, what's your opinion about this game?
I liked it. I think I liked it more than Castlevania 1, and I'm probably the weirdo that likes CV2 the most out of all the NES ones. So
hey man, I'm not gonna knock you. I like CV2 better than this game, so don't let that shame you here.
But I think I did like all the variety of the bosses and all the weapons and stuff. It did get frustrating at times, but I guess I think the only time I got truly frustrated was when I played through with Sypha, like basically tried to kill Drac with Sypha, and that was a mistake. I should have just gone with Trevor. It took forever to kill Drac with Sypha. But yeah, I liked all the the variety of platforms, like with the sort of that seesaw and the pendulums, the swinging pendulums, and the music was great. But there are a couple of, when I did the Alucard route, I really just despised that falling block section where you had to transform into a bat, and basically, if you died once, if you hit in that section, you're screwed, because then you're only left with like 5 hearts at the beginning of the stage to fly up.
That part is brutal.
And you can't do it, and then you have to go through it with Trevor and just wait for the blocks to fall down, and it eats up like a minute or two. But yeah, I think it's probably my second favorite on of the NES ones.
Duke said this was his first time playing. Was this your first time playing it, or how many times have you played it before in the past?
I think I bought it a year or two ago. I didn't beat it. I think I got to level 9 and then just sort of threw my hands up when I got to block 9.
Mhm.
And then I came back for this and sort of did some more research and sort of paid a little more attention to the patterns, I think, on those stairs and the waterway. So I think... And then I beat it with all 4. I got all 4 endings this time around. So
I was a witness for a couple of them. Are you a fan of the franchise? I mean, you said you played 1 and 2, but like explored the other ones like 4, Symphony, or any of the DS ones, or
I have
64.
I have Castlevania 64. I've heard not great things about that one.
It's weird.
And I can't remember. I have one of the DS games, and I have Bloodlines, and I have CV4, but I'm probably gonna play through those in the next probably year or so. And I've bought Symphony of the Night at this last PRG, so I'll probably try that one out soon.
Cool. So Matt, what's your opinion about this game? I know you're a fan of the franchise.
Yeah, so Castlevania is a franchise, actually my favorite all-time video game franchise. And this game especially is very, very nostalgic for me. Probably the most nostalgic Castlevania game outside of maybe the first Castlevania. I played Castlevania III a ton as a kid, and one of the strongest memories from my childhood that I have is I was probably around 10, 11 years old, playing this at my cousin's house and just staying up as late as we could trying to finish the game and making it to Alucard's boss fight and thinking that we were fighting Dracula, but we were actually fighting Alucard and thinking we were getting ready to beat the game, and then discovering that it was Alucard. But yeah, this game is very near and dear to me, and I played it a ton as a kid and into my adulthood, but never finished the game. And why I didn't, I don't know. But until it was like a few months ago, I decided to start going back and actually finishing a bunch of games that I played a ton but never finished. And this was on the top of my list. And yeah, I beat it just a couple months ago, actually, even before I knew the podcast was coming and that we were playing this game for the month. But yeah, I love this game. It's probably my second favorite Castlevania game out of the entire franchise.
So best on the NES for you?
I still the very first Castlevania is my favorite. That's my favorite,
Sure.
And this will be number 2. But I almost kind of think of this as almost more of even though it's technically a prequel, more of a sequel to the original original game than 2 was. And I like 2. I enjoy 2 as well. But I didn't have that game as a kid. I had a friend who had it, and I played it a little bit. And aesthetically, I think that game is awesome with the flame whip and the different whips you can get, and the music in that one is awesome too. That's the first time we heard the Vampire Killer song, Bloody Tears song, but yeah, I love the series.
Yeah, I was going to say that this is actually, at least according to the manual, it's 100 years before. It says it's 100 years before Simon Belmont's birth, so it's definitely a prequel to the first one, the first 2.
Yep.
I think that Matt, this is my favorite franchise, NES franchise of all time as well. And I'm curious, Ryan, you said you like Castlevania 2. I have a lot of nostalgia for Castlevania 2, and I like that game a lot. But it's far superior to me as far as just the gameplay and the quality of the game. So is it only because Castlevania 3 is too hard that you find that you like Castlevania 2 better?
I will say that I felt that this game was the cheapest. I felt there's a lot of cheap enemies with the crows and cheap placements of the patterns of the games, of the enemies. That, yeah, I would say the difficulty really affected my enjoyment of this game. Where I felt if it was just a little bit easier, because even Castlevania 1 is difficult, but I don't think it's unfair. This one I felt there's a couple moments where it's really unfair and really. I'll say it wasn't so bad until I probably reached level 7 is when I started noticing a increased spike in the difficulty. But level 9 is really what dampened my feel of this game, where I think I was still enjoying the game a lot until level 9 came around. And then after that, it put a sour taste in my mouth, this game.
What was it about level 9? Was there one spot in particular, or was it that entire level?
The entire level.
The entire level, really? Okay.
It was because it starts you off with the hunchbacks, and that part isn't so bad. But then it gets to the next part with the spikes, and that part isn't so bad, But then it gets to the level where it is the flying gargoyles with the statues, with the shoot the fire at you, and it's really hard to pattern it. I couldn't find any really good, transitional pattern of going about it, and the best way I could do it was using Sypha with her short, I guess, was it a sword or her
It's like a
cane?
wand. It's
Yeah.
it's kind of like a staff. I think it's a staff.
Yeah.
I found that because if you die, then like if I started off, I'll say I made it pretty far after beating the level 8 boss, which was Death. I found, because I had her blue orb lightning ball, I found that helped a lot through that level. And then when I died, I made it to the level, the 2 sections above that, which is the rising up part, where it's not like a slowly rising, it's like I don't know if the ground's falling kind of thing, where it goes doom, you have to keep going up and up.
Yeah.
And then after not having the orb, I was like effed. I couldn't find any good power-ups that I thought would help me. It made it really difficult without having any power-ups to get to that part. Like if you see any speedrunners that they know exactly what drops what, or they get, and it really trying to figure it out yourself and trying to find all these things. Like I eventually would, if I could make to that part, I know I could get to how you develop your patterns here, but with only 2 lives and so few checkpoints in that level, it makes it even worse. Like the way I overcame level 9 was the US release has a help me code, which gives you like 9 lives. 9 or 10 lives.
Yes.
So
9 lives, yeah.
so I typed in, I went to GameFAQs, I found a help me code for the Sypha route, and I just practiced that level. And I seriously put in like 3 hours into that level, maybe even more, just trying to learn the level. Just because I get to one area, and the thing that stinks is when you get to a new area. For me, I get to a new area, and then I die, and I run out of lives, and then I'd have to start back with 2 lives at the beginning, and then work my way back up, and then it's really hard to learn the level when you keep dying. So that help me code really did help, because I could actually learn how to get past the mermen or the fishmen and the crows on that water level, and then I had to worry about the Medusa heads. And then after the point where I figured out I could probably get to that part, I went back and I put in my name, and by proving it, if you go into my Twitter page for the kill screen, if you beat the game, it says whatever name you put in underneath Trevor's name. Yeah. So it says Sauce under the kill screen for the picture. So I did go back, and then I used my name, and after that, like I said, I had the level memorized, because like even learning Doppelganger's attack was tricky for a minute there too. And you hear all these other strategies where people saying you can lock it in with holy water, and I couldn't. Like I had a triple holy water and just walked right through it. It didn't affect it at all. So or like people are like, just use the axe, and I just couldn't. I eventually found out like the way with Sypha and using the select button to get Doppelganger to fall below, and eventually just kept using the lightning orbs to destroy Doppelganger. But it was like it was a giant 3-hour process for me, and I don't know if I've ever had any frustration like that before. This might be like the most difficult NES game I've beaten so far, and I've beat some tough ones, so this one might be one of the toughest ones I've beaten. So.
Well, didn't it feel good once you beat it?
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah, I was just like I think I made sure I did the give me the password right away when I died on Dracula's level because I think I had like 1 life left. So I was like, give me the password. So I make sure take my snapshot of it real quick so I didn't lose my progress. That was a great thing about this game is the password system. I think the second one has it. The first one doesn't. The first one just has the limited continues, but it's not nearly as long of a game as this one. Like there's some levels in this game that are pretty long, but thank God for the password system in this game. So.
Yeah, this Block 9 is definitely I think the hardest part of the game.
Mm-hmm.
For me, my first playthrough where I finished the game, I played through with Sypha, and I didn't have trouble with level 9 until you got to that waterway after the green section where it's like scrolling. And that part was so brutal because of the crows. And that was the most frustrating part of the entire game for me when I played with Sypha, is just going through that section, because you go through the left and you got to go up the stairs and right again. And on top of the crows and the mermen, then you get in Medusa heads coming in too. And then those the stacked skull heads that take so many hits to kill. And I also had a lot of trouble with the doppelganger fight, and I pretty much told myself like I needed to have full health to make it through that fight. So it was so frustrating when I would try to go through that waterway and just take 1 hit or 2 hits, and it just like it wiped my energy almost to like nothing. And that was so frustrating to me. I love this game, but I take a hit from a crow and it takes away 4 damage. I mean, that is brutal.
Yeah.
And so I had a lot of trouble with that part, and with the doppelganger fight there with Sypha. I finally ended up beating that doppelganger using her and the fire, her flame. That pretty much wiped it out pretty quick. But on my second playthrough for the podcast, I played through with Grant's path, and using Grant at that section, you can avoid that entire waterway completely. You can climb up on the stones and just skip it. And it was amazing because I didn't have to play through that. And that's pretty much what I used Grant for in the entire game. I would use him for some of the more trickier platforming spots because he was definitely more agile than any of the other characters. And his ability to climb and hang on to walls, you can skip entire sections of some of the levels where you can come up and over instead of either going down and playing through a whole nother set of screens. And him using on that waterway made it simple. And then even with the doppelganger fight, it was a breeze with him. All I did was crouched and used his knife to finish off the doppelganger. It was simple. I don't know if that is a strategy, if I just got lucky, and but I didn't take any damage from the doppelganger fight with him. It was simple.
I think you're right though. I think Grant is has the best chance against doppelganger going straight up against him. Like if you try to fight him straight up. Yeah,
because his attacks are quick, and that's pretty much the only boss fight I used Grant for was, and a little bit on Dracula too when we get there, but he was the only because his weapon is so short ranged, and he has limited secondary weapons too. But I pretty much used Grant only for the platforming and some getting through the levels. Most of the other time I was always using Trevor.
Because I kind of thought Trevor, if you watch any of the speed runs of it, a lot of the bosses are kind of trivialized with holy water if you know exactly how to pin them in place and stun lock them. Including the doppelganger. If you can get him right as he's sort of, I don't know, appearing, and right in that corner, that bottom left corner, you can kind of just stun lock him in place and just keep chucking holy water if you can time it right. But the problem is, like Ryan said, you have to like if you die, you have to start the whole level over, and I think the only holy water in there is in that auto scroller on the right side, which you have to kind of race to get to if you're using Trevor. So, or you have to switch to Grant or Alucard and sort of squeeze into a couple of blocks just to get to it, to that holy water. So it's definitely, that waterway is basically what can make or break your level 9, I guess, your block 9 run.
Yeah, if you're using Grant there too, he's easier to navigate that level. And there's also a 1-up to where you can break a brick and get that 1-up every time if you go back through that. So you can kind of keep cycling through that without losing all of your lives.
I didn't know about the 1-up.
Yeah, it's about halfway up that stage, and on a block to the right, you can break it.
Because
I beat Doppelganger both times with Simon. I didn't use the side characters to beat him. I had Simon and the double shot boomerang.
Okay.
And that was pretty helpful. But I agree. I think that waterway for me was my biggest challenge. Because like you said, you wanted to have a good amount of health once you got to Doppelganger. And it got real frustrating. You got hit twice, and it was like, forget it. This is might as well start over at this point.
That was that frustrating.
My hardest challenge, I think, in the whole game was that one little section.
Yeah.
I did find out, however, after I played through it both times, because I was watching some videos to kind of prepare for the podcast here, and I didn't realize this, but if you have Sypha, you can freeze the water.
You can freeze the water, yeah.
I didn't know that. I saw somebody do that on the playthrough. I was like, oh, that's cool.
Yeah, because Sypha's ice, like, I think her freeze spell, but you can also freeze an enemy in place and then sort of walk up to them and bash them with her staff, and they break them, and they break in a million pieces.
You can also jump on top of the frozen enemies too. They use it to get as like a little shortcut to jump to like an elevated level. But you have to be really quick with that because the ice doesn't last that long. Believe me, I tried. I think it worked. I think it worked one time for me where I felt like a speedrunner for a second there. But,
oh, and I was going to say that that glitch town, I think Duke was showing off in Baird on Mars's charity stream. You can actually use that to skip. I think I was watching JC, one of these speedrunners. He went from block 6 to, I think, basically the keep right outside of Drek's keep by using that glitch town. You have to do it. Has somebody actually did a bunch of research and figured out if you do certain inputs and like certain glitch screens, you can skip like to almost the end of the game.
That's funny.
With these characters though, like you guys, I only beat it with one character. I mean, I should say, one pair with this Trevor Sypha route I had. But you can beat the game just by Trevor himself. You can beat it with Trevor and Alucard and Trevor and Grant. Well, did you have a preferred route playing this game? Like, if you were going to play this again, you say, this is the way I enjoy this the most, I'm going to play this the most. Are you just more open to, like, exploring, playing this all varieties? Chris, I know you beat all versions of this game, because I saw most of them. Chris, what was your, I guess, favorite route of playing this game?
I guess just Trevor only, honestly, because I thought that I thought it was, you kind of end up almost handicapping yourself to some degree by leaning too much on the other spirits, I've thought. And then I think if you're just sticking with Trevor, he's sort of moves kind of like I guess I'm so used to how the Belmonts usually, like, their movements or platforming styles and sub-weapons. So I think I prefer just using one character. But I think the second probably favorite would probably be Sypha and Trevor. I did like some of Sypha's spells, especially the lightning bolt. It was almost like a heat-seeking spell, and it was useful on both death forms.
Yeah, Death was kind of a joke because if you play with Sypha, she basically breaks him, which is great.
What did you? I didn't know that because I used Trevor for that boss fight. What would you use with Sypha to beat the orbs or the?
Yeah, the blue orbs. There's a couple drops because the walk. There's the bridge that's falling apart. Over one of the first candle drops is an orb, a blue orb. It's might not be the first one, it might be a few blocks in, but if you get that, then you're just gonna get a ton of hearts. Skip the red flame, get the blue orb, jump over that red flame attack that she has, and then his first phase, where it's just the Grim Reaper with all his sickles flying in the air. If you go to the top block and use to shoot the orbs, you don't even have to worry about moving because the orbs will take out like every single one of the flying sickles, and then they'll just start going after him. And then the second phase basically is just keep going back and forth, left and right, and shooting the orbs because you don't have to worry about anything. You just let the orbs do all the work for you. So
that's funny because that was one of the first. That was the first boss fight that I had trouble with using Trevor, and I think I ended up beating his first form by getting the double shot for the cross and using that to finish him off, and then realizing like, what, there's another form, and I had trouble with that, not knowing the strategy to get yourself basically to the right of the skull. And once I figured that out, it was a breeze to finish off that form. But yeah, I didn't know that with Sypha, and I pretty much I used her in quite a few of the boss fights using the flame because that thing was super powerful. It was kind of hard to hit sometimes, but if you hit with it, it did a ton of damage, and that's what I used to finish Dracula off. I used her exclusively on the Dracula fight. I didn't use Trevor at all on the Dracula fight. I just used Sypha and pretty much the fire because it blew through him quick.
Yeah, I found though that if you need a couple of tries to beat him when you have Sypha, you don't have a lot of hearts. So I had to use a combination of Trevor. Like I used Trevor exclusively when his Dracula second form, because that's easy, that face melting thing.
Yeah.
To save hearts. And then when I got to the platforming beast, I ended up using Sypha again because her flame was good to use for the distance and for the power.
Dude, what you didn't do was keep going back up and down the stairs and reloading the hearts.
I didn't. Yeah.
And that's how you get your triple shot.
Triple shot. Yeah.
Yeah.
I didn't. Yeah, that's another thing I discovered after I played it on a video. I was like, I didn't know you could do that.
Mm-hmm.
I did that on my second playthrough with Grant. I used Trevor only for that Dracula fight, and I used the axe and got the triple shot with the axe, and used the axe for his final form and for the multiple bleeding face. That the triple shot with the axes went through that pretty quick.
Matt, what was your preferred characters if you're going to play this again?
The Sypha route.
Sypha route? And Duke, what about yourself?
I agree. It was
Sypha?
I like the Sypha route, yeah. I like the music in it. I like that ship level. It was just a fun level.
Yeah, I'm glad you said that, dude, because that ship level is probably one of my favorite levels of the game, just because it's so different than any other of the Castlevania games, especially in the classic series. Because it's more of a it doesn't have that gothic feel that the game typically has. It's something a little different.
Yeah, it's a very similar level in Ghosts or Ghouls and Ghosts. Super Ghouls and Ghosts. There's a similar level. It reminded me of that when I first stumbled upon it. I was like, this reminds me of that level in Ghouls and Ghosts on Super Nintendo.
Yeah.
When you play as Grant, does that boat level still come into effect? Because there's like 16 levels in this game, which you've been hearing Chris talk about calling them blocks. That's what it's referred to in this game. They're calling blocks. I prefer levels, but still, like I was gonna say, because Grant's a pirate, right? So I would say if anything, it's like a ghost ship. It's essentially is what it is, and I think that's a great feel of Grant hits that run. I know I've seen it on the Sypha route, but to me it makes sense for Grant basically that boat level's there.
Yeah.
So I think you can go either after you get Grant, you can either go the upper like the levels that are above ground or the ones that are below ground. So I think you can kind of do Alucard's route or Sypha's route with Grant, which, like I said, Grant's kind of miserable to use for Alucard because it sort of expect you to fly through a couple stages, and I kind of found it
funny
weird.
story. I didn't know that Alucard could turn into a bat until I was at Dracula.
What?
Yeah. Well, no, it was I was the pendulums were right before Dracula. I
Yeah.
accidentally somehow turned into a bat. I was like, what? I didn't even know. So I
That's
was like, oh,
funny.
this is great. So I just flew across to where the pendulums were and went right to the stairwell. But I had no idea. I had no idea. I guess you push down and like both buttons or something like that.
Down an A, I think.
Okay. Yeah. So I
Yeah,
discovered
down.
that well into the game, at the end of the game. So
That's funny.
I never used the bat at all until Dracula level.
Yeah.
I did find it pretty cool that she'd actually fight like Alucard, Grant, or and well, I know Sypha you don't fight, but you fight the Cyclops to get Sypha because she's sort of been imprisoned by
She's
him.
frozen by a sight or something like that. According to the game's wiki, she lost her battle against the Cyclops.
And then I think they actually introduce Sypha as a he, and then you don't find it as a she until the end.
I thought that was
that's
a typo.
the big reveal.
Yeah, I think that was on purpose, right? Because it's spelled differently too. It's Sypha, and then I think in the credits it's spelled Sypha, right? I think.
I'm not sure. I didn't notice that.
Sypha, yeah.
I did, however, notice though, if I'm not mistaken, Grant Dynasty was spelled differently in the credits. It was DU.
Dynasty or something like that. Yeah.
I think it's DA. I think it's DA everywhere else.
Yeah.
I think there was a slight misspelling in the credits, but maybe it was very kind of like, cursive writing. So maybe it was just, but it looked like it was a DU.
I always thought I was mispronouncing his name as a kid. I was like, there's no way his name could be Dynasty. Yeah, but I think the Alucard's route is definitely out of the three. That's the hardest. Like going to Dracula's castle from the very bottom part and working your way up. That's the hardest
that was
route
the first
in the game for sure.
Did.
Yeah, it's tough.
And
It's a lot longer that way too. It's a lot longer. Yeah.
It did seem easier the second time with Sypha for me.
Yeah, those her route and Grant's route can be pretty quick to get to this castle.
I know you can only have two characters at a time, but you can apparently switch off them in these routes. I didn't see any ability to switch off during the Sypha route, but I imagine the Grant route you can switch off and hit Alucard. I didn't play that round, so is there any way? Did you see it like you hit the level where you would get Alucard and you could switch off?
Yeah, you can.
Yeah.
It'll say.
Yeah.
It'll say, "Do you want me to join you?" And then I think it basically that you tell Grant to hit the road, and then you get Alucard.
Beat it. Yeah. So, did you guys have any other like bosses that you really like or remembered? I mean, one that sticks out for me was Frankenstein. And it's because of the blocks. Oh, I just remember because of the first game. Like I had my strategy down for the first game, which was like, I know it's called boomerangs, but I always refer to them as crosses because I like the idea of like the thought of like religion fighting off, Dracula. I always, so to me it's the cross. You're throwing crosses, even though it comes back to you, it's a boomerang. But I didn't have that ability this time. I think I used flame from Sypha to really take him out, but you have to watch out for the falling blocks coming from the sky, which kind of threw me off a little bit. But I still, because he's in, I want to say he's in 6, but yeah, he's one of the more memorable ones. I didn't care for having to fight the same bosses over again. I know this game's a little bit longer, but I didn't like having to do bosses where it's like, okay, you got to do the mummies and the Cyclops. And then you do it again, and then you gotta do what's the
gargoyle thing?
Yeah, it's like a red gargoyle. Yeah.
I mean, other than that, I enjoy that. I just don't, I guess, like things being reused. I guess as for boss fights, and it happens a few times on the Sypha route.
Because the evil flame with the 3 coffins, it was interesting, but yeah, I kind of not a giant fan of boss rushes, like that mummy, Cyclops, gargoyle. But I think I like the death fight. I thought that was kind of interesting. Just kind of, I kind of just like the aesthetic of the sprites. You had to fight the Grim Reaper, and then you had to fight this giant. I guess he was the Grim Reaper's skull. It's just this giant skull that's just chasing all over the screen.
Yeah, that was a surprise for me at first. I think I mentioned that earlier because, I don't think in any other games death has 2 forms, so that was a shock. I was like, oh no, he's got because Dracula
I was like,
always
what?
has multiple. Yeah, yep.
For me, I'd say my most troublesome boss was probably actually one of the earlier bosses, the Bone Dragon. That thing,
Yeah,
because if
that
you have
was
to
tough.
fight it twice, I really got frustrated with that one because you beat it like halfway, and you're on those little platforms, and he knocks you off pretty easily.
Yeah,
Then you got
there's
to
a
go
lot of
up,
knockback for that one.
and then you got to fight him again, and it's like by the time you get to him the second time, it's like you take many hits, and you only have a couple of. I only had a couple of bars left. You know, each time I tried to fight that second time, that was pretty tough. So that one gave me a lot of fit. I thought all the other bosses were fairly, I don't want to say easy, but they weren't like crazy hard. And I probably liked fighting Dracula the best. He was probably my favorite boss because I thought the patterns were fun, and he wasn't that challenging, and it was just kind of fun to beat him. So he was probably my favorite boss to beat. Actually, was because I didn't think he was that hard.
Yeah, let's talk about Dracula right now because you know what? I will agree with you that after level 9, it almost seemed like Dracula. I don't want to say it was a breeze. I died at least twice where I got the final hit on him, but a beam came out of his hand and still killed me. So it took me
Oh,
it took me a few tries.
yeah, me too.
But with Sypha, I had a pretty good strategy that I picked up from a speed run that worked really well with Sypha with her flame attack where you just walk up to him before he does his third flame where he shoots he shoots a flame between you stand in the middle of these two flames that he shoots up from the ground, and basically you can keep doing flame then hit with the cane flame, so you can keep going back and forth, not needing to jump, and that'll take him out instantly with like a few hits. And then you just move to the left of him when he goes to his second form, which is the multiple faces, and then just keep doing jump and flame, jump and flame. But then the third form, I took some advice from Chris, and he told me use the axe, go to the side and use the axe. So I got the triple for the axe because the axe is I think right before the stairs leading to the swinging
Pendulum room.
pendulum. Yeah.
Yeah,
So
that was a little tough too. That run before getting to the pendulums too. Until I figured out because I would always take hits going up those stairs by the skeleton throwing the bones
Yeah.
every single time. But I eventually found out that if you walk all the way to the left, it switches his pattern to where you'll go back, kill the red skeleton, and then walk up the stairs, and he's on a different side of the stairs, so you don't have to worry about taking hits. Because before I got a good strategy down with Dracula, I pretty much had to get there with full health, and I would always take hits in that part. But until I figured that out.
See, there's a health drop right before that in the wall. There's a
Right.
pork chop in the wall. But the thing is that spider that keeps regenerating always gets a hit on me.
Yeah.
It always would get like and it does like 4 or 5 damage on you.
Yep.
And it always gets me no matter what. I can never plan it perfectly either. So I almost always came into the Dracula fight taking a little bit of damage. But yeah, that room right there was always a little pain in the side for me here.
Yep.
But I said, and then I would just basically stand on the side because he at that third form, there's blocks coming up from the ground, and he's shooting a laser beam at you from his fingers. But the coward easy way to do it is basically just to have that triple, keep going, taking your time, being patient, go to left when that laser beam comes out, and then go back and then jump and throw the axes and hit him in the head, and then it's game over. But yeah, like compared to the first Castlevania, I thought this Dracula fight was much easier, even though it's a longer fight. But I really did enjoy the Dracula fight in this game a lot.
Yeah, I'd say for strategy with Dracula, is just being patient, and sometimes for me that's hard to do, especially like on the final boss, and the music is intense, and you got multiple forms, but it just being patient and taking your time with those fights, you'll get through it.
I think one thing you could do, and I was told by one of my friends, is like those beams are too long. They kind of are too long to jump over. But I think if you use the momentum from the platforms, which I never did, but if you're going the same direction as those platforms, you get a boost of speed. You can make it over those.
Yeah, I noticed that. If you jump straight up, you can't jump over them. But if you're jumping at a angle over to the side, you can make it over the beams. Yeah. Yeah, I found the pattern's very easy, the first two forms, but then I had the biggest challenge with the third form and the platforms.
I had to sort of juke the those laser beams. Like I would sort of go to the edge of a platform, and then wait for the beam to start coming, then run back.
Yeah, you can kind of direct where he's shooting those a little bit.
Yeah, yeah, I noticed that too.
I wanted to ask you guys too, have you ever seen anyone beat Dracula using Grant only?
Never.
I haven't, no.
Yeah, I never even thought about that until now.
There are runs. There's a speedrun category of it, but yeah, it's not easy.
Yeah, because I mean that knife is so short. I don't even know how you would do that.
Yeah.
I can't
especially
remember.
with no sub weapons or
most of those runs through the Japanese version though, because like one thing, I mean, we'll talk about this here shortly, or maybe we can talk about it here now. The difference between the American and the Japanese versions of this game, the North American version, I should say, because in that version, Grant throws his dagger. It's not just a stab motion. He throws the dagger in that version. And I was gonna say too, one thing, there's a few differences in that game. Like, there's a lot more checkpoints. Like when I think of Castlevania 3, like now after playing it, it's almost more tempting, not just because of the music, because there's a special music chip put in to that version, which makes the music more liked from what I hear. Basically, like I said, I only played the North American version. I can't swear by the music listening through the Japanese version here, but because there's an additional music chip, so there's more.
It's like a heavier bass sound.
Mm-hmm.
I actually own the soundtrack to this game, and it's noticeably different. It's cool. I mean, I love both versions, but yeah, it's neat. It's a fuller kind of bassier sound almost.
So Grant has two sub weapons. He has the dagger and the axe. So I think in the speedrun for the Grant only, to kill Dracula, you're just pelting him with. You get a crap ton of hearts, and you just start hammering him with axes.
With the axe, yeah.
Yeah.
I was gonna say though, like if you look up most of the walkthroughs online are mostly the Japanese version, and it's kind of like kind of a crock if you ask me, because like you'll start seeing stuff like, oh, you can beat Frankenstein with one hit with Sypha with their lightning orb, but that's the Japanese version because the bosses, you deliver more damage in that version as opposed to the American version in that game. There's more checkpoints in that game. Like if you lose to Dracula, you go back to the halfway point of that level. In the Japanese version, you start right outside of Dracula's fight like you do in the first Castlevania game. Chris, you were telling me there's like a rental store conspiracy on this, right?
Oh, that's what people always said about some of this. Like they made American games much harder to have a lot more replayability because people were renting them because people are renting a game that could beat in like a day or like a weekend.
That's funny.
But who knows if that's true?
I've never heard that before. That's interesting.
According to some other gameplay changes too, apparently Dracula's laser beam isn't as long. Like in the Japanese version, it's shorter than it is in the American version. So they made things just a little bit more challenging for the U.S. version, I guess. So like to me, like maybe replaying this game, I would probably maybe try. I have an EverDrive, so I can always play the Japanese version, but I had at least say I beat the American version once. So I'm glad I did it, but it was definitely a challenging game. So.
With how much challenge you had, I'm it's kudos for beating it, Ryan. That's impressive that you had that much, difficulty with it and you stuck with it and beat it. That's great.
It's a great feeling too, because it's like you said, it's a hard game, and it's great.
I do want to play it again. I do really want to play it again, but I probably will lean into the Japanese version maybe next time.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, I really do love the different character aspect of the game. I think that's really a neat aspect of the game, but that does make me want to play it as all the different characters. But
well, this was one of the first times. It's definitely my first time in Cartridge Club history, but maybe the first time ever where right after I beat a game like this, that I wanted to play it again. Usually, when I beat a game, I move on to another one, and I'm exhausted of it. But I was like, I want to play that again, and I was so happy that there was branching paths and different characters. So that was it tells a lot to me how much I enjoyed playing it, how tight I think the gameplay was. It was just so enjoyable that I went right back into it and played it right again, which is very uncommon for me.
So, do you guys have any favorite tracks? Because this game's known for its soundtrack. I know, Matt, you were talking. You have the soundtrack for this game, right?
Yeah, I bought the record a few years ago. There was a company called Mondo, where if you ever watch Happy Console Gamer, he buys a lot of that company's records, and they do a lot of vinyl only releases for video game soundtracks. And yeah, I bought the record for this and for the Super Castlevania, because like I said earlier, this is in my favorite all-time series, and I'm a big music guy, and the music for 3 especially is awesome. And the record, the vinyl version, has both the American or North American version and the Japanese version of the game. And but some of my favorite tracks, I love the prelude, the opening of the game.
Yeah,
you put the game in, and it has that the film reel, and it's just a very epic sounding intro. So I love that right off the bat. And there's another track called Mad Forest. I'm not sure which what block or route that was in, but that's another good one. And probably my favorite track is called Aquarius. That's another one that's very it just kind of gets you pumped up. So yeah, the soundtrack to this is great.
I think the soundtrack in this game as a whole is just masterful, and definitely a highlight of the game. And like Matt, I really like the prelude, the opening of the game, and even the music when you're typing in your name and your code and everything is really cool with that laugh that they play. It's really just really cool. And I just, before the podcast, I was breezing through. I don't know I think level 5, like the first screen or the first level or 2 when you get Sypha. I think it's called Rising. I really like that one a lot. And I think there's a track called Anxiety that is really, really good as well. I mean, all of it's great, but I'm just picking out a couple. And Deadbeat is another one that I noticed. Again, I don't know what levels these are, but I listened to them and I saw the title of them on YouTube, so that's why I'm picking these particular ones out. But again, the music as a whole was just fantastic.
I guess the prayer, the opening, going into the first block's music is probably my favorite. Sort of gets you pumped up.
No, I'll back everyone up here, because that prelude song, I always just I turn on the console, and I always play these games on a CRT television, so my TV always takes maybe just a second or two to warm up before it turns on. So you hear the music going, but as it fades into my TV turning on, and so I always just like hearing that, the beats start right off and just goes right into it, and just let it play, and it goes right into the I guess the story of the game, of what's going on too. But I always just let that play for a little bit before entering in my password. Another track that really did stick out for me, and maybe it's because I played 3 hours plus of the level, is level block 9. think Chris knows because I think I was humming it a lot while he was playing it in the hotel from at PRGE. But yeah, because that song got stuck in my head because you just hear it so many times. It's catchy. If I was to say one thing positive about Level 9, it's the music. So one thing that's neat about this game is kind of like the influence it's had over the most recent years too. I mean, has everyone here watched the Castlevania series on Netflix?
Yeah.
Yep.
What do you guys think of it?
I thought it was great. It's pretty. It's very adult, so not for the little ones, but it's. Yeah, I thought it was really good. It follows the story pretty well, with the exception of the one glaring omission with Grant not being in the show. But yeah, I thought it was really good. What did you think, Duke?
Yeah, same thing. I was a little turned off by the gratuitous nature of it. I thought it was over the top and not necessary. But other than that, it was definitely a fun watch.
Yeah, I think that's kind of a little bit of Warren Ellis, the guy who wrote that. It's kind of some of his MO, though.
Gotcha.
I thought that a lot of people just complained that there's a lot of unnecessary cursing and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It
if
doesn't
anything
fit
else,
with the time period. I don't think they even said those words back then.
Well,
Yeah, that's a
Little out
good
of place.
that's a good point. Yeah.
you know, I will say that the only thing I was hoping for was that Grant would be in that show. And granted, there's supposed to be another one more season for the show. But it's interesting, without spoiling it, it's kind of interesting where it leads off where, is the game over? Or, or like, the story over? But
Yeah.
there's supposed to be one more show and one more season at least. I kind of hope that Grant gets kind of added to the show. Has anyone also played that Bloodstained Curse of the Moon, which is the 8-bit version of the Bloodstained game, which also kind of like takes heavy influence from Castlevania 3 with the multiple characters, and the abilities of the characters seem awfully familiar with
Yeah.
the characters in this game?
Yeah, I played it.
Yep.
What'd you guys think of that compared to this? Because it's, I believe, RF Gen's Game of the Month.
I thought it was much easier than Castlevania 3, but it gets harder. That one has another game with a lot of replay value on. There's different ways to go through that game. You can even go through that game with just the main character and kill all of the other playable characters and kind of absorb their power or take a different power from them. So that game has multiple endings, and the difficulty ramps up with each playthrough, so that gives it a little bit more replay value too. But I would highly recommend that one too.
Duke, you said you played it or no?
Yeah, I played it on the 3DS when it first came out. I really enjoyed it. It wasn't as good as Castlevania 3, in my opinion, but it was definitely fun. It was a great throwback, and it was. I recommend it for anybody who wants to play a more modernized version of a Castlevania game.
There's even like an easy mode to it too, or like where
it's real short too.
Yeah, it is short, but I think that leads to some more of the replay value too. So you don't have to slog through a super long game. But yeah, it's definitely, they have some user-friendly options on people that maybe didn't grow up with the original games to make it a little more playable.
I thought I saw too on one of those games done quick that if you beat the game, there's like another mode where it kind of turns it into like a Ninja Gaiden game. But I don't know. I haven't played. I just watched the guy speedrun, and it looked very much a Ninja Gaiden style game playing it. It looked interesting. So I could see the replay being very high for that game too.
It has some other branching paths that open up after when you play through it on the second playthrough. You start with the 3 playable characters, and your main character is, you're basically going on another quest to save him, and you can kind of take some different branching paths similar to the PC Engine, the Rondo of Blood, to where there's kind of some hidden paths that you can take.
Cool.
Yeah, it's fun.
All right, guys. Final thoughts on Castlevania 3. How about we start off with you, Duke, again? What's final thoughts on the game? Anything we missed? Anything you want to cover before we say goodbye?
No. I guess I'll just recap what I already said. That I think it's for the NES. I'd say it's a masterpiece and near perfection. It encompasses everything that I love in retro gaming. It's challenging. It's fun to overcome the challenge. It's got fantastic graphics, music, tight gameplay. I love the genre and the theme. I really can't say anything bad about it. So I'm a huge fan of it, and I highly recommend anybody play it that likes Castlevania or likes any kind of platforming, 8-bit platforming game.
Chris, how about yourself? Final thoughts? Anything we miss?
I thought it was a great. I always think the Castlevania games are a great ode to sort of classic horror. You had Frankenstein, and that, of course, Dracula and some and all those sort of ghouls and like the zombies and things in those games. I think it's great. It's great. I think it's one of the best looking games on on the NES, and I really liked how they had kept all the same sub weapons and even added a couple of new ones in, for all the spirits that you pick up, like Alucard Spirit and Grant and Sypha. So I thought there's a lot of variety, and I think I'd probably say it's a must play for anybody who's collecting for the NES.
Matt, how about yourself?
Yeah, same. I love the game. Yeah, I recommend that everybody play it, and don't let the difficulty turn you off. The more you play it, the better you'll get. And yeah, it's such a rewarding feeling when you finish a tough game like this. So yeah, just play the game.
As for myself, I will say I will back you up, Chris, that I think the sprite work is fantastic in this game. I love it. The sprite work. I wouldn't mind actually having some like 8-bit artwork from this game because I love the sprite work from this game and the first game too. Like I said, I like this game despite the difficulty, but man, like I don't know if I really want to replay this version. I think the Japanese version might be much more appealing with the forgiveness and the more checkpoints for me. Where I wouldn't say I can honestly maybe I guess I can recommend this game if you're a fan of the Castlevania series, but I guess I would say I give caution that it is difficult. So if you like difficult games, this is probably in your wheelhouse here. But I would probably recommend the people who maybe don't want to play such a brutal, difficult version of Castlevania game, and you like Castlevania games, maybe play the Japanese version. I know it's pretty pricey now, but if you have a means like an EverDrive, probably play it that way. Play it that way. I know we have some community comments here. Jeffrey Hillard at Self Destructo posted on Twitter because he beat the game, and he kind of, I guess echoes my sentiments on the game. He said that was brutal, so frustrating. I'll never play this game again. So, but thanks a lot for playing along. But he did do the Grant run. If you look at his photos, and I know Matt, did you say you felt was the Alucard run was the hardest, or was it Duke?
Yeah, Alucard for me, that's the hard because it's so much longer, and it's just there's way more boss fights, and that's the toughest route.
I only say it because I always thought I heard Grant was the most difficult. So, like I said, if that was why, congratulations on your first try, you beat the most difficult run, Jeffrey. So, but thanks a lot for playing along here. But with that being said, that's the show, everybody. Just remind everyone for November we will be playing Metal Gear Solid 3 Snake Eater, which is on PlayStation 2. I think it's on Xbox. You can play it backwards compatibility on Xbox One, and it's on PS3. We'll be playing that in November. So if you want to join in or want to just talk about it, we have comments, or if you're playing along, make sure you use the hashtag #PlayAlongWithPrime. For those of you who want to get a head start in December's game of the month, we'll be playing Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic for the OG Xbox. So if you're interested in being a guest on any of these shows, please reach out to us. We always look forward to having new community members on the show to talk about the games that they love. Well, if you're also into Portable, next month they will be playing, CC Portable will be playing Alien Infestation on the Nintendo DS. And also another sister station for the Cartridge Club, we have the Quick Save Club, and they'll be playing Ages of Empires. And I heard that is on Game Pass for PC. For those of you who are interested in supporting the club beyond a review of the podcast app of your choice, we'd like to mention that the club is funded by its community. We are very grateful for our supporters, and if you're interested in becoming one of them, please look into it, how you can do it at patreon.com/Cartridge Club. But before we say goodbye, I want to thank our guests for being on this month. Duke, you're the veteran here. Why don't you start us off? Why don't you tell everyone where we can find you online?
You can find me on Twitter at Duke0619 and on YouTube at not at Retro Nonsense, just Retro Nonsense.
Thank you very much for being here.
My pleasure. It was a good time. Thanks for inviting me on.
Chris, where can we find you online?
So I'm on Twitter at baseguy654, and then I'm on Twitch. I do speed runs on Twitch for 4 or 5 days a week, 4 or 5 nights a week, I guess. And my Twitch handle is baseguy4.
Thank you very much for being here, Chris.
Thanks for having me.
And Matt, where can we find you online?
I don't have much of an online presence, but if you do want to find me, I'm occasionally on Twitter at xmattbandyx. So yeah.
Thanks very much for being here.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Ryan. Appreciate it.
No problem. We always like having new first-time guests on the show here.
Yeah, this is my first time on the CC Prime, and I've been around for a while. So it's,
Yeah, you've been here for a while, buddy. So I knew I had to get you on the show. So.
Yeah, it's good. I appreciate that, especially being one of my favorite games. So yeah, thank you.
As for myself, you can find me on Twitter at It's Rocket Sauce. I'm also on the Discord, the CC Discord. Sometimes you'll see me there. But yeah, just look for me there. I also have an Instagram at the same handle, It's Rocket Sauce. So if you want to, say hello, that's where you can find me. But with that being said, I just want to thank everyone for tuning in. We look forward to hearing from you next month. CC Unite.